Welcome. If you are new here, welcome to my Serene Stamper channel. My name is Tina. I live in beautiful Nova Scotia, Canada, and to all my friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to share another embossing folder technique with you because A, I'm obsessed with embossing folders, and B, I know you guys love them too. And I've been playing with a different technique, and I have come up with a really cool way to do paper piecing with embossing folders. And a little fun extra tips and tricks. In today's video, it's really all about me experimenting and playing and having fun. Very much on the fly, wasn't really sure how things were going to turn out, so I just kept the cameras rolling and wanted to bring you along with me as I experimented with this technique and my ideas. So you really do need to use 3D embossing folders for today's technique. You will get the best impression. And I used the Changing Leaves embossing folder and the 3D sunflower embossing folders from Stampin' Up. And I also pulled out a few other embossing folders, such as this one, the Exposed Brick. And I used the retired Falling Leaves embossing folder as well. So what you're going to do is once your paper is embossed with the embossing folder, and I'm just using 4 by 5 1/4. You can use basic white, very vanilla, and you want to add glue only in the areas where you want your paper to stick, because we are going to layer some vintage paper on top. I also used designer series paper. It did not work very well because it's so much heavier, but we'll get to that. You can also see that I'm pulling in some of my coffee stained paper, and I'm going to stamp on it using my Elements of Text stamp set. And I will say, I squeezed out some of my liquid glue and I used a scruffy old aqua painter to pick it up so that I could apply my glue where I wanted it on the design of the embossed areas. You could use a fine tip glue pen, but that's what I did. Once you put your paper on that embossed layer, you're going to put it back in the embossing folder and run it through again. And what's going to happen is the pressure of that second embossing is going to press the paper that you put on top of your original embossed paper, is going to press it into the glue. So it's really going to get in those nooks and crannies really, really well. And then you're going to set it aside to dry. This is where I tried using designer series paper. I used the Full of Life designer series paper on my Changing Leaves embossing folder. So I've just run it through a second time, and now I'm adding some glue randomly to the Exposed Brick. And I'm just going to randomly add some of my coffee stained paper here and there where I want it to be on that cardstock. Run it through again, and then I'm just going to set it aside to fully dry. Now this was just a piece of coffee stained paper. I had shown how I made this in a different video for my coffee paper, and I just simply glued it onto a card base because I wanted to use up that extra glue, as you could see me doing there. So I just pressed that paper onto a card base. And then I decided I'm going to tear off the backing of the card and run that top layer through my embossing folder. And I used the sunflower embossing folder. Now that the paper has dried on top of my embossed layers, I'm just tearing around the petals and the leaves wherever I put the glue. And it doesn't have to be perfectly peeled off around the edges. It is all going to come together really, really well. This doesn't take a lot of time to do. I did end up pulling in my Take Your Pick tool, and I used the that tip to kind of pick that paper away in the kind of hard places to get with my fingers. And because that coffee stained paper was glued so well to the petals and the leaves, it just stayed behind. I was just picking off the little bits that didn't have any glue underneath them. So I'm just trimming off the edges to make it nice and clean. So it's just a little bit smaller than 4 by 5 1/4, but you can really see where that coffee stain paper stuck to the areas that I glued. Now this technique I have shown before in my other videos where I'm just dabbing some ink onto my glass mat, spritz it with some water, and then I'm just going to drop it right on top, and those bits that are raised from the embossing are going to be the only ones that pick up the ink. So you can go back in and press your paper wherever you want more ink on your paper, but I do like leaving some of the white behind, especially on this particular layer. I was also making sure I got some of that ink onto the coffee stained paper as well, just to pull in some of that color. And now I'm just repeating this, and again, this is the exposed brick embossing folder. So I just wanted some of that coffee stained paper just here and there, a little willy-nilly onto my card panel and pick up some ink. And this one I did get more ink on that white background just because I was playing and I wanted to just see how it would look in the long run, and it did turn out really, really nice. And if you think you're hearing purring in the background, you're not imagining things. My cat Forrest is purring up a storm beside me as I record the tutorial to go along with this video. So as I mentioned earlier, the Designer Series paper was a bit too heavy for this technique. It made the tearing portion a little bit more, not difficult, but definitely more tedious, and I didn't get quite the effect and look that I was going for. So this did end up being my least favorite of the cards that I created today, but you don't know till you try, and it's all about playing, and that's what I did. And our our designer series paper is a beautiful weight. So you may have pattern paper at home that's not as heavy as this paper, and so it may work really, really well, and it just gives you more options. And this is the first time I was just taking my ideas and going to town with them. So some things were a hit, some things were a miss, but you don't know until you try. And bottom line, it's all about having fun and playing and being creative. You could also use tweezers. You could use an X-Acto knife for when you're pulling your paper away from your embossed design. It's completely up to you. I just used my take your pick tool. And when you use your different papers, such as paper from antique books, for example, they're going to be really thin, almost on the fragile side. So bear that in mind. It's going to make it easier for tearing, but also when you apply your glue, sometimes the glue will go right through that antique vintage paper because it is thinner and it will take a while to dry. And I had that happen on some of my cards, which I will show you as we move along. Now I knew I wanted to put some green on this card for the leaves, and I knew I was going to be using some green inks for the previous panel I just showed you with the Designer Series paper. So here I just picked up some of the green and put it on that panel. Now I'm pulling in some antique paper from a vintage book, and I made sure the book wasn't worth a ton of money before I started tearing out my paper. It was Best of the Operas or something. But anyways, I ended up trying to heat the glue to dry it on my paper with the heat tool because it was taking a long time to dry. But look at the difference for tearing the paper. So much easier. Just like when I used my coffee stained paper, which was the photocopier paper that I had used for the coffee staining, it tears off and around those embossed images so much easier. I really wish I had some embossing folders with feathers. I think this technique would be gorgeous using something like that. And so I am going to be looking for embossing folders with feathers in the future. But also, if you have embossing folders that have more white space in between the embossed design, you're going to get a really cool effect using this paper piecing type of technique. Again, I'm adding some ink, and I pulled in colors like Daffodil Delight, Pumpkin Pie, a little bit of Cajun Craze, and reds. This is my real red. And I just kind of went to town. And once I had all the colors that I wanted, I again misted it with water and then just swiped my paper across. I also used some of my Azure Afternoon just to pull in a little bit of blue, and then look how pretty it picks up on that paper. Oh my gosh. So all of the raised embossed portions of your paper is what's going to hit that ink first. So unless you want some ink in between your embossed images, you're not going to get any. You're going to have to push in between on those white areas in between the raised embossing. There's the finished piece, and you can see where that paper is embossed right into that sunflower design, and the bits of color coming through. You can add more color, less color. You can use heat embossing. You can do so many things. And I mean, I'm telling you, I have been playing with this technique a lot, and I really wanted to get some different ideas to share with you guys, and I will be showing those to you. But I think it's really, really cool. And I think when you have a play with this, there's a lot of different things you can do with this, like a ton. You can go on top with your early espresso and get this to pop out more. You can go on top, sorry, farm trucks. You can go on top with, well, let's just do it. Versamark. You could use gold, you could use silver, your black, whatever floats your boat. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I think I might do white. So I lost the paper that was on this leaf because this is a solid image, and I didn't even think about that when I put my embossing powder on, but that's fine. It looks fine. But look at how that paper piecing comes through the design, and even the colors are coming through. I really hope the camera can pick that up. Because I don't have any extra lights on for filming right now. I'm hoping the natural light from the window can show you guys. But that, I think, is really, really, really cool. And those of you who loved mixed media, I think you could have a lot of fun with this. And it's just a fun way to use your embossing folders. But don't you worry, I have more ideas I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. Okay, I'm going to use the Changing Leaves embossing folder, which has retired. I mean, you could use that just as it is and add a sentiment, but I think that's really cool. And I'm going to go ahead and add some ink to that. Now I ended up getting a little color happy, as you can see, but I really love how it turned out. And after I pressed my embossed piece into this, I had so much ink on my glass mat. I just took a plain flat piece of cardstock, actually 2 of them, and just pressed them into those colors, and then set them with the heat tool to dry, ran them through my embossing folders, just because, again, it was all about playing and creating. And I just kind of veered off the track a little bit, but I ended up using these with the same technique that I'm sharing with you guys today by adding the paper on top. So this is a retired embossing folder. It's called Parisian Flourish. And then the other embossing folder was the Falling Leaves, and that one was also a little bit more tricky-licky because of the tiny little leaf images, but I just had to play and added glue where I wanted my paper to stick and had no idea how it was all going to turn out, but I was pretty pleased with how these ones turned out. Here are my finished cards in no particular order, and I'm just going to show you how I assembled them. And some of them I did not film how I did the backing, but I basically used the same technique that I already shared with you. But I'm also going to show you some of the things that I did not film, because otherwise my camera would have been running for hours. But here is that one base that I did show you guys how I did by putting on my coffee stained paper that I stamped on and then just swiping it across on the ink. And then the sentiment is from the Notes and Totes stamp set. And I just love how that turned out. This is the one that I did where I added the white heat embossing, and the sentiment is one from my digital downloads. This world is brighter because of your heart. And if you haven't already gotten my free Serene Stamper sentiment sheet, be sure to subscribe to my newsletters and you will get that download. It's got all kinds of fun sentiments that you can print out. I print them out on our white and our very vanilla cardstock and use them like that. And here's another one that I did. And after I added the paper, oh, let me backpedal. This is the panel that I swiped on my glass mat to pick up that remaining ink that I had spritzed on. And then I glued on my book paper, and then I swiped crumb cake on top and put it on a crumb cake card base and just added an embellishment. And the sentiment is also from one of my digital downloads. Your kindness stuck with me. like my favorite glue dot. I crack myself up. And I did something different in here. I used some of the embossed book paper that also had some of this ink on it, and laid that scrap on the center, and then cut out this portion with a die. This is from the Grow dies, the one that had the herbs and everything. This set, Grow with Love's dies. So I used this die right here. I love this set. And I just used that to cut out a piece from the Fairy Vanilla so that I would have space to put my little note to whoever I send this to. So that's just something different and fun. And I did pop that up. So there's how that one turned out. This one was wild. I was all over the map with this one. This was one of those panels where I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to save this. Like, I just kept playing with it, and this is what I came up with. So there's a lot going on here. There is the book paper. This is the seashells embossing folder, by the way. After I glued my book paper onto my embossed piece, I then swiped on some Versamark and embossed it in clear. After that, I ended up swiping on some black StazOn. And after that, I decided to add some metallic gold paint and cut it with my perennial postage die. And that's what I got. The sentiment is from my Serene Stamper sentiment sheet, wishing you moments of peace between the waves. So that's how that turned out. That was one of those pieces. Boy, I was just like, this is not working. This is not working. But you know what? I just played with it. And I think it turned out really cool. This is another one that didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to. And I just kept playing with it and tweaking with it. Same thing. I added some clear embossing, and then I swiped black StazOn on top. You could also swipe your ink on top of your embossed image and then put clear embossing powder on top, or not. But that's what I ended up there with the Changing Leaves folder. And then I stamped Newsflash, You're Fabulous from the Notes and Totes stamp set onto a scrap piece of my coffee stained paper. And then I tore some of the book paper and glued that around it and put that just on a crumb cake card base. This one, I just put it on my Melon Mambo card base, and the stamp is from this You're the Very Best is from a paper pumpkin. No, it's from an old kit that we used to carry. And then the thank you is from the Simply Said stamp set. Just something fun, something different. This one, I don't think I showed this in the video. This one, I'm Happy You're in My Life. And I did a little clear embossing on that one as well. Now this one, this was my least favorite out of all of them. The Designer Series paper is just too heavy for this technique. So I ended up stamping some script from the Elements of Text right on top of that. And then I covered the whole thing with clear embossing powder. And then I used my embossing folder, like the die cut that comes with it, onto some of that Full of Life Designer Series paper. Same thing, stamped on top with the script, embossed it with clear, and then I used the mini alphabets, and that's using Night of Navy cardstock, and that's how that turned out. And then this one was with the brick, and I pulled out one of my favorite stamp sets that's long retired, Grace's Garden, and I stamped the little cat on some of my coffee paper and cut him out with the die, and the little bird, I'm not sure if that's from the same set or a different one. And then of course this die is retired as well, and that was just already pre-cut in my stash. But again, I can see where I've added the book paper and that ink swipe background, and a nice little birthday, which also came from the Simply Said stamp set. So there you go. That's what I came up with, my friends, and it was really fun just to play and experiment And that's how you come up with different fun ways to use your stamp products and just to have fun playing and creating. So I hope that gave you lots of ideas today, you guys. There's a lot going on there, a lot of different techniques, and I hope that this video gave you some inspiration to stamp and play at home. So until next time, my friends, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you so much. Take care and happy stamping.